Welcome back. It's been a little while. I think, wow, since before Christmas that I last released a video. Well, I did have that tubeless conversion video, which almost nobody watched, but aside from that, a lot has transpired since the last video, and let's see, where to start. I didn't buy just one, but I bought two full suspension bikes, as I promised that I would get another full suspension bike. One of which I haven't even been able to ride yet. I may not get to ride it this year. And the other one, I am super surprised at how fun it is to ride. I'm not going to say that it's as fun as the hardtail, but it most definitely is the full suspension equivalent to the hardtail in terms of fun to ride. Let's see what else. What else happened? Alex was down for the winter. I got on lots of rides with him. One with even him and Brian. Actually, two with him and Brian. That was a lot of fun. Of course, there's all this COVID-19 stuff, which I don't really want to get into. But one of the reasons you haven't seen anything from me during this COVID period is because my business is considered essential, and I can't just close up without being in breach of all kinds of contracts. So I don't have a lot of time to make new videos. So here I am from my office, doing a bike check voiceover, vlog, if you will. But you didn't come here for a State of the Union. You came here to see a bike check video of a super slick, incredibly fun to ride, drop dead gorgeous, old-fashioned because it's made of steel, yet modern because of geometry super aggro, Stanton Switchback. Dare I call it a custom one-off Mr. Tonka Switchback?
It's got your sweet Mr. Tonka sticker on here, and your top tube, I'll put it that way around, you can see it a bit better. Mr. Tonka sticker here, all painted by Simon here at Stanton Bikes.
It was really cool of him to surprise me by putting my logos underneath the paint and all. It's so subtle, but it's a super nice touch. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so one last order of business before we get on to the build. I have a couple of questions to answer from the last video where I introduced the Stanton hardtail. One was, did I get a steel frame or a titanium frame? The answer to that is steel. The other question is, why did I get a steel frame if I talked so highly about the good titanium frame? So it pretty much boils down to price and experience. And without the experience on hardtail bikes, I wasn't really willing to pony up the dough for the titanium frame. Now, looking back on everything and knowing what I know now, I really wish I would have bitten the bullet and bought the titanium frame because I really, really like riding this bike. It's just so much fun. But I didn't, and such is life. I've got the steel frame. I still love it. It's a blast to ride. I choose it almost exclusively to ride over the last 2 months. It's just so much fun. So yeah, now with that out of the way, let's move on to the build. With all the talk of the frame, let's start there. This is a Stanton Switchback. It's designed for 27.5 wheels. It comes in steel and titanium and has almost a limitless number of paint or titanium anodization finishes. For the steel version, Stanton has a plethora of paint options. The paint is absolutely stunning in person. The depth, the uniformity, the finish, it's all top-notch. While the Switchback doesn't currently have adjustable dropouts for a single-speed conversion, it does come with ISCGO5 tabs, which is one of the features that steered me in the direction of Stanton to begin with. Now, while shift cables and brake hoses are run externally, they do have internal cable routing for a dropper post. Having only experienced internally run cables on my other bikes, I have to say that I'm a fan of both, actually. But I really do like the ease of installing the external cables. At 65.5 degrees, the head tube is pretty slack, and it has a reasonably steep seat tube at 72.7 degrees. All that modern geo is paired to really short 415mm chainstays. This magical geometry recipe makes for an insanely fun bike to ride. The previously mentioned head and seat tube angles were measured while the bike was on a 140mm fork. I wanted to push the envelope a little bit, so I went with a 160mm fork from MRP, the Ribbon Air. Why the Ribbon Air, you ask? Well, there are a few reasons. One, MRP has blemished items for sale, which this was one of, even though I couldn't find the blemish on it anywhere. Two, it comes with a ramp control, which I'm familiar with and like. Three, it has separate positive and negative air chambers for the spring. So while most forks self-balance the positive and negative air chambers, MRP allows you to fine-tune the feel of the fork by putting in the desired PSI values in each separate chamber. 4, I've just heard wonderful things about it and I wanted to see what all the hype is about. I've just set it up on MRP's suggestions and I haven't touched anything, and I've got 0 complaints so far. You know, I never really built a bike, so when it came to the cockpit, I played around with it a little bit. I went with a short 40mm stem from Raceface and paired it with a 25mm rise, 800mm wide carbon Next R handlebar. I like the 25mm rise, and while I plan to cut the bars down to 780, I've yet to do so, and I'm not sure that I will. For brakes, I'm running my beloved TRP Quadium G-Spec brakes. I've got a 203mm rotor in the front and 180mm in the rear. I can't talk highly enough about these brakes. The lever is super ergonomic. Almost everyone that has felt them has mentioned how much they like the lever. The feel is superb. They have real modulation with loads of stopping power. They use mineral oil, which I like, and the people at TRP are just great. But maybe the best thing I like about them is that you just set them up once and you just forget about it. They are truly set it and forget it brakes. I keep saying this, and a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know that that matters, but they are set it and forget it. They don't change in feel, they don't change in reliability. They're great brakes. I love them. I've played around with a lot of grips, and I'm currently running Lizard Skin Charger Evo grips. I demoed a bike with these grips on it during a Chasing Epic trip, and when I got home I bought a pair, and they've got loads of grip with gloves on. Whether their gloves are wet or dry, they've just got tons of grip. So here in Florida, my gloves are going to be pretty wet, so having lots of grip with a wet glove is pretty important to me. They're a little bit on the small side in diameter, and I would probably like a little bit more cushion, so I'm probably going to play around and get a new set of grips sometime soon. I really like the loam lever from PNW Components. The actuation is smooth, the tactile feel is great, and it's grippy without ruining your gloves. I have it mated to their 170mm Bachelor dropper post. I got super lucky that it fits perfectly all the way down in the seat tube. When you can get a dropper post seated all the way down like that, when you drop the seat, it's like gone. It's like not there, it's not in your way, and I really love that. Speaking of saddles, on top of that dropper, I'm running the Aragon SM Pro. I've tried several different saddles over the years, and I've saddled on this one, and now it's on both of my trail bikes. I've had pretty big days on the bike with this saddle, and I've got zero complaints. One of the things other than a steel frame that helps with ride quality is my wheel and tire setup. Having run DHF and Aggressors almost exclusively on all my bikes, I was a little skeptical about running the Recons in the 2.6 configuration. They just look like there isn't much tread there to grab onto the surface of the trail, but I was pretty wrong. For the conditions I ride, which are loose or loose over hardpack or hardpack with very little mud, these things have loads and loads of grip. They're not quite plus size, I call them pleasantly plump. I do have them mated to a 31mm internal width rim, and in that configuration they do dampen the trail chatter quite a bit. But what I love about them is they don't deaden everything like a lot of 2.8 tires do. And I do run a cush core in the back, which means I can generally run somewhere around 20 psi up front and around 19 to 20 psi in the rear before the tires start getting to feel squirmy when you push hard into berms. Of course, the rims are Noble's TR38s. These rims are laced up to i9's Hydra wheels. Hail Hydra! Seriously though, I think I'm partial to the silent hubs when I'm riding by myself out in the woods. But for some reason, the i9 buzz just seems to fit this bike really well. It almost like it solidifies its hooligan roots. And I've been on Noble wheels for some time now. Actually, I think it was since December of 2017 since I started with Noble wheels, and this is my third set of them, all of which I'm happy to report are still rolling strong. The drivetrain on this bike came stock on my 2018 Yeti SB5 lunch ride. So that means this bike is running an X01 drivetrain. I know. You're thinking that's not an X01 derailleur or a cassette. Well, you're right. That's an XX1 derailleur, which SRAM sent me as a warranty replacement for my X01 derailleur that broke. And the day I was actually filming these buttery slow motion clips of this bike out on the trails, I tried a 360 and actually snapped the chain. When I put a new chain on it, I then realized that my cassette was worn out and had to get a new cassette. So now it's rocking an X01 cassette, an X01 chain, and an XX1 derailleur, which I'm happy to report brought this full build down to just under 30 pounds. The reason I wanted the ISCG05 mounts was so that I could run a chain guide and a bash guard. And if you follow my channel on Instagram, you know that I'm running Absolute Black oval chain rings. So it made sense to go with Absolute Black's oval bash guide. They call it an oval bash guide because it's a chain guide and a bash guard that accommodates oval chain rings. Pretty slick. One of my favorite features of the oval bash guide is that the outer portion of the chain guide actually swivels up so that you can have easy access to the chain. And I know a lot of you are probably saying that's not a big deal, but you might say that's no big deal until you get a chain outside of a chain guide that doesn't have this feature. The last part on this bike to discuss are my pedals. Now I've got 3 mountain bikes and every one of them have a set of these DMR vaults on them. They just work. They just work. They're super durable, they're user serviceable, they're user rebuildable, and they are quite possibly the grippiest flat pedal available to purchase today, as long as you use the right shoes. I really love how this bike comes from all over the place. I mean, the frame, the pedals, the chain rings, they come from the UK, the saddles from Germany, the forks from Colorado, the hubs are from North Carolina, the rims are from BC, the droppers from Washington State, and all the other parts from all the other places. And when assembled, it makes for one seriously fun machine to ride. I've pretty much been riding this bike exclusively during all this social distancing time because the only trail system open has 55 miles of single track. The majority of that trail system is flat and sandy, but it also has some areas with dirt jumps in it. This Stanton Switchback's like the perfect bike for that because it's efficient at pedaling and the 2.6 tires handle all the sandy bits just fine. Yet it's got an excellent jump pedigree behind it. I sometimes explain this bike as from the seat post forward it's an enduro bike and from the seat post back it's a dirt jumper bike. It's just so much fun to ride. So yeah, I think that about wraps everything up. I don't think I missed anything, so that'll be it for this bike check. I do have 2 other bikes to bring out and introduce to you guys, but that'll be for a later date. I'm probably going to bite the bullet and start building some backyard trails as I'm realizing how much time and mileage I rack up driving to my trail systems. I think it might make sense to build something at my house so that I can ride a little more regularly and maybe get more than that 1 day a weekend. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss that. And until then, thanks for watching.